What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. This is, I think, episode 31. As you can tell, we're whole. The whole gang's here today, boys. How we feeling?
Good man, battling
Good.
some sickness right now,
Yeah,
but
Ruven
in the
got a little.
building.
Ruven's going through his flu game right now, even though it's a sinus infection. Anyways,
Yep.
the goal today, as y'all saw in the title, we're going to talk about how is your team looking heading into Christmas. We're going to kind of quickly rapid fire it in a sense where we'll just go through each team. But to begin with, just to kind of get it out the way, because, as cool as teams like the Pistons and the Magic are in terms of potential, the for the most part, except maybe the Magic, the writing's on the wall. The season's kind of over. But just to kind of loop like the Pistons, Hornets, Rockets, and Spurs together, I think all of them have shown like a lot of potential, a lot of nice young pieces. But overall, it's still kind of like a few years away. I feel. Is there, if you guys could pick like one player as like the guy to watch out of those teams, who would you say? You got PJ
That's,
Washington. You got
yeah, I don't know about that one.
I
Uh,
think
what do you got, Chin? I mean, I would just say Lamelo because he's back, right? Like, I want to see it coming back from injury. I just want to see how he develops this year.
I hope they don't. I hope
I
they don't
mean,
shut him down though.
I don't think they will because I think he needs the run, right? Like, they shut him down, and I really hope they don't give him because they're gonna be bad regardless. Like, this team's not good. Like, you lose Miles Bridges, and it's like you need your young players to get development time. So I think like he'll be the player to watch this year, at least from those bottom shelf teams.
I think my player from all those teams is honestly Killian Hayes. I think a lot of people a lot of people wrote him off very fast. Like after was it his first 2 years,
He's
first
playing
year?
well now. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like obviously getting the run now because Cade Cunningham is out indefinitely. But I don't know. He has obviously shown a bit more potential. DJ and me tried to make a trade, but I knew
Christian's such a
Killian.
shyster, man. Okay, here's the thing though. Y'all are drinking the Kool-Aid on Killian Hayes. Killian Hayes is a fucking bum. But
Yo,
the
that's actually
thing.
facts though.
here's the thing. Some team is gonna drink the Kool-Aid and trade like a crazy solid asset for him. Like, I don't think it's that he's out of the league yet, but the way he's playing, I don't think it's sustainable in the sense of like him being, like this lead guard in a sense. Like I think he's more so kind of akin to like I think DeLon Wright would be a solid comp. Somebody who's able to run your offense in a sense, but isn't really going to be the full engine. But definitely one of those solid Pistons. Pun
No, yeah,
intended.
for sure.
Running it.
I think it's like the biggest thing is like what I've noticed from having him on my fantasy team and also just like kind of taking a look at what he's been doing. Like he's been like relatively efficient for like kind of the role he's just been thrust into, and I think like yeah, I think that's a good comparison. Like DeLon Wright or like KCP, Contavious Caldwell Pope, like a player that will just be like a solid glue guy at the one like spot, right? But you never know. Maybe his potential is just it's
Hey,
still waiting to blossom.
true, true, true. But I don't know if y'all got the noti or whatnot, but live on air as of right now, Anthony Davis out indefinitely. He's got a stress fracture in his foot. That is crazy because it went from being a month to now obviously when the
Damn.
word
Saw
indefinitely
that.
gets thrown out, especially with a player like AD, that is very, very
And,
concerning. And it sucks though because AD was playing like an MVP level player. He was finally playing like this player that's supposed to take the reins from LeBron, supposed to be the next guy, and now I don't want to say that's down the toilet, but you hate to see that happen when he was like starting to really ramp up the production and whatnot. What is this? What do y'all think? Do you think the Lakers should just like fully tank it now? Like, I don't actually. Just what do they even do? Because there's no real money to really go around. Like,
Well, the
I
worst,
think they
the
were fun
worst,
in the
situ-
sense of like having Russ, but
yeah,
now you're kind of back to square zero in a sense.
yeah. Well, I mean, the team hinges on AD being healthy, right? Because he's their best player. As much as you want to talk about LeBron, like he's in year 20, 38 years old. Like he can't sustain this style of play or this many minutes without like a co-star. The worst position to be in, and you guys know this in the NBA, is literally like in the gray area, middle of the pack. Like, right, like there's no winning to be had there. Like, sure you'll compete, but right now, like, there's no long-term direction. And like, I'm gonna talk about this with a specific team as well. But the Lakers are in the middle of the pack, right? There's no money to be had. They have one draft pick that they're able to trade, and do they want to give up more draft capital when easily LeBron could walk away? I think, is it this year or next year? Russell Westbrook, he's an expiring contract if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Russ is done
And
after
then
this year.
right, and so what I'm saying is like you lose draft capital, you already don't have capital until 2027, right? If you trade that for another player, you're gonna mortgage your future. So what do? You have to either go all in on this current window that you have, which I think is hard because AD's injured again. And so this is the most crucial point of the season for them where they have to string together like a stretch of wins for them to be good enough to compete. Because, like, dude, they're not even in a playoff spot right now. They're a play-in spot. They're at 13th in the Western Conference. So what do you do? And how can they tank when they don't have the draft pick for this year? It goes to the Pelicans. I think it's top something protected regardless. Is it a protected or is it an unprotected pick? I can't remember.
I would think it's. I'm not entirely sure. I would think it's not protected though, just to kind of maximize like the fact that it was AD when he was like top,
Yeah.
top.
But regardless, right? Like you're most likely going to lose that draft pick. And so what do? You go into next year with the same situation. So I mean, it's up to the front office now to be like, okay, what direction are we going to go in? Are we going to try and fire sell everybody? Because there's a lot of value that could be had for a guy like Russell Westbrook still at this point for a contending team, or a team that wants to get out of kind of like that purgatory. But I don't know. I don't know. What would you guys do if you had to choose between them trying to fire sell the team, right? And let's say this includes LeBron and Anthony Davis, or do you go all in and you trade that pick and you go in for a deal like a Buddy Hield or a Miles Turner or whatever it takes from another team? Because I do not want to be the Lakers front office at this point, especially with so much pressure on them to try and win with this core. I don't know. That's difficult. I can't even think about like what side I choose.
Yeah, I think the only way to word it is that classic saying, "They're up shit creek without a paddle." I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think LeBron has a kicker in his contract if he is traded. So that's all.
He's in a
That's
trade
even
clause too,
more
right?
money. Yeah, so we'd have to waive that. And even then, as valuable as an asset LeBron is, even in like his age 38 season, I think it's always that you're never going to be able to get back star for star. LeBron's not going to go to a situation where he's being traded for another star. He's going to play with that star. And even then, like, there's not, I don't really see any situation where they have a stable crop of young prospects that could entice them as well as the draft picks, but still have like the star of the show still being there. So I think trading LeBron's probably out of the question. What I do think will happen is that I think they're just so tied to the fact that this 2027 draft pick is going to be like their only one for like the next 4 or 5 years. So I don't know if they'd actually fully part with it. But in addition to that, this situation's probably because it's always been that they're they're considering it, but they don't want to fully come over the edge. I think this situation might kind of force them to jump over that edge, and you know, if they are able to get somebody like a Buddy Hield and a Miles Turner, I think that bodes well. And the only thing with that is that obviously Miles Turner's an expiring contract. I saw earlier, I think the figurehead is around like 19 mil, which honestly pretty solid. Or that might have just been the number the Pacers were offering, but regardless, uh, it's just the fact that again, draft capital is so special now today, especially with like how loaded drafts can be, and this might be the situation that fully pushes them over the edge. And I think they'll be able to tread, but evidently, it's like a complete almost mirror perfect image of like the whole Celtics and Nets situation that happened all those years ago.
Yeah, 100%.
But speaking
Yeah, I
of
don't really have
that,
much.
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Chin.
No, yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. I do think it's just like if I was realistically talking, I don't think they're gonna do anything, and I think they're gonna just like have to
They're
live in
gonna
live in
get
basketball
LeBron to
poverty for a
backpack.
bit. Yeah,
LeBron's gonna
and
have
I
to
think
backpack when he's 38, which is crazy.
if anything, they like showcase Russ. I think like they've already had talks, and like he's already started to start again. Like, so I do think that they're going to just play it out for now at least. And if I were them, really, I would look at moving. Yeah, like I know I agree that LeBron's really not like suitable for any situation for any team really at this point, unless you want like fans in the seats. But I do think AD is someone that could get tossed if they wanted to save the franchise at least.
True. But, maybe he does come back later in the year and he's at least I. Anyways, I think that's
Yeah,
a
they've
little
got to tread
perfect
water
segue.
though. They've got
Yeah.
to tread water.
Oh, for sure. Which is highly unlikely. But
Yeah.
let's segue into the bulk of what this podcast is going to be about. Ruben, you kind of hinted at it. Let's talk about some teams. Let's talk about your boys. I know you got a lot to say. Thank God they
Oh
won
man.
against the Knicks, but
Oh dude, if they didn't beat the Knicks, I would have had like a whole larger spiel. But I think the writing is on the wall for the Raptors at this point in terms of, like we just said it about the Lakers. The Raptors are stuck in this purgatory, right? Basketball poverty, right in the middle of the pack. This was a team that overexceeded expectations last year. When you come into this season, they didn't do much. There were two significant holes that needed to be addressed in the offseason, and that was they needed a combo guard or a backup guard to Fred VanVleet. Otherwise, your top guard at 6 feet tall, who's playing league leading minutes, is like it's not positive for the health of your squad, and he's so important to what everything the Raptors does. So they had a point guard spot that needed to be filled. They needed a center spot to be filled. They drafted a center at Christian Coloco, who's a really solid young player,
no doubt.
who should not be playing that many minutes and should not be trusted in that role if you are trying to compete for a playoff position. Christian Coloco is a guy that needs to be down in the Raptors 905 playing minutes to develop. But he's being hinged right into a starting center role simply because there's no one else to play there. Khem Birch has been out on and off all season. Chris Boucher started the season injured. Precious Achiuwa has been out for several games. We don't know when we're going to see him back. And regardless of me saying that, the Raptors team still doesn't have a true center aside from Christian Coloco, who is also probably as heavy as Joel Embiid's foot. So I mean that's number one. That's number one, and then obviously the guard spot. I'm gonna give you guys a couple stats because I put them together before this podcast. I'm so excited to show you guys why I'm talking about this. Okay, so they're shooting 30.9% from the field and 32.2% from three. Those are terrible percentage. Why? There's no spacing, and everybody knows that about this Raptors team. There's no spacing. The best current three-point shooter on the team is Malachi Flynn, who's shooting under league average at 33%. They're 15th in the league in defensive efficiency. So what does that mean? They're literally in the middle of the pack. Like they are that is as middle of the pack as you can get. They're dead center in the league. They're not great and they're not bad. They're like a neutral defensive team. They're dead last in defensive rebounding. They can't secure and close possessions. They are one of the best teams at defending second chance opportunities, albeit, but at the same time, without a true center, like a lot of your paint presence, you don't have a real big body there who can secure those boards, so you have to do it by committee. The problem is when you do it by committee, you end up being one of the slowest teams in the league, and they have the 6th slowest pace in the league. And despite their youth and athleticism, they can't come down with rebounds. They're offering up a lot of second chance points, even though they're defending well against it. But what that does is that slows down your offense. And again, no spacing stagnates your offense. So a lot of times you're stuck in iso ball and having to run a lot of different sets and or run a lot of pick and roll, which is going to hinder like your ability to play a faster pace. And when you play a pick and roll, the beautiful part about it is you create disadvantages and you create mismatches. But when you have no shooting, you can switch everything and or you can drop back. And so what that does is you close the paint. And if you guys watch the 52-point game, Pascal Siakam, give him his flowers against the Knicks, right? Because he was all worldly and I saw a Knicks reporter be like, "Okay, Pascal, you score 50 at the Garden. This is your superstar stamp." If you watch the way that he got his buckets, he did it with literally no spacing on the floor, but he managed to do everything. There's no fugazi about his game, right? Like he's just ethical basketball, right? Getting to the rim, getting to the free throw line, posting up, fadeaway jumpers. I mean, it was beautiful, and a lot of his points were in transition too because they did a really good job defending and forcing turnovers, which they do really well. They're number one in points off turnovers and number one in forcing turnovers, but they can't capitalize on what they do best because of the fact that they can't secure these second possessions. Um, and then they're the fifth worst team in assist percentage. So what does that tell you? Also, there's a real lack of playmaking on the team and poor shot creation. And so oftentimes, like what this reminds me of a lot, and people who are like, I just thrown out a bunch of stats to visualize and contextualize like what I'm talking about. And Matt, they are currently in the Eastern Conference version of Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks. Pascal Siakam is currently Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks of the Eastern Conference. There's not a very good roster around him. And to be able to ask guys like Gary Trent Jr. to be, big time offensive scorers when he can get a bucket, but the problem is he can barely stay healthy. He has not played up to par this season. Fred, same thing. Scotty Barnes has had one of the worst sophomore slumps like I've ever seen. And it's not looking bright. There's something clearly wrong with his game. The team has been really unhealthy, and Nick Nurse is trying to force a system on a team that's it's not constructed to execute that type of style. And so you want to see a team that's doing Project 6ix9ine really well? Look at the Orlando Magic. They're doing it pretty well. Despite being 12-21, they're a team that is rebuilding, regardless of what we say. But they're a team that's doing it really well in spurts. And they've got a lot of young players that'll eventually develop into really solid NBA players. But all of this is to say,
Wendell Carter Jr. back today, I think.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, look how many great bigs they have. They have really solid bigs. They have solid guard play, solid wings.
Bull, baby.
A breakout season. And look at him, dude. He's like, what, 7'1" with 7'6" wingspan, and he can take it down the floor and spin on people and finish at the rim.
Y'all
like,
see that one dime he had? Where he did a Luka-esque behind the that was nasty.
He's special, man. But there's no one like that on the Raptors. And so when you play Project 6ix9ine, you got to have guys like that. All that is to say, a lot of pressure now is on Masai Ujiri in order for him to put a proper roster around Pascal Siakam. I was going to go down the road of saying, take this shit, trade everybody, yada, yada, yada. But Pascal Siakam is a top 10 player in the NBA currently. I just don't think there's any argument about it anymore. He has been one of the best players in the league this season, and you got to build around his prime because he's at 28 years old, and he's got a trajectory where like you build around this kind of guy. Like he's a franchise cornerstone. And I'll give a hot take. He's having a better year than Chris Bosh ever had in his career in Toronto.
Yeah,
that's good company to be in. So, are you saying okay? If you were to trade any of the players, what do you think is like the hierarchy of like for sure to like the Pascal level / Scotty level where they're like pretty much untouchable? You think?
Oh, in terms of like, we got to trade. Like in terms of like, what do you mean? Like if this guy's
who's the
who
first
needs to
person
be
you're
moved?
trading?
Who needs to be moved? Who's staying?
It's most definitely Gary Trent.
Yeah,
it's most definitely Gary Trent. I mean, because he's opting out too. I mean, the leak came out like a couple days ago saying that he was not going to opt into his player option, and so the Raptors can't afford him because they still have to pay Fred if they want him to stay. They're going to have to extend OG next season. So, like, those are your two priorities. OG's your for sure number one priority. I think OG's untouchable because he's a defensive player of the year in candidate.
They're saying that the market's probably like three firsts.
3 firsts, and like it's basically whatever Utah got back for Donovan Mitchell is essentially the same kind of value that you'd get for OG Anunoby.
I'm not gonna lie.
But
Even though I think that the numbers don't match, I think that's pretty
Yeah.
accurate. That's what I think the market.
Well, I think how Mitchell is effective on the offensive end is how OG is effective on the defensive end. Plus,
plus the
he's a
overall
positive shot
two-way
creator.
ability, yeah.
Yeah, and so like that makes a lot of sense, which is why I'd say if you're going in the direction of building around Pascal, you're not trading OG because he's the perfect guy beside him, right? Who can defend multiple players and then who can get a shot creation as a like tertiary scorer. But then that's where you go in the conversation of you trade Gary Trent, you put a feeler out in the market for Fred.
You traded Fred. Come on now.
You put a
I
feeler
agree
for
on
Fred.
trading Fred, to be honest. Thinking about it right now.
That's what I'm
Fred's
saying, you put a
amazing. You
feeler
know,
for
he's
Fred.
the heir apparent to Kyle, but
Yeah. And you sneak a little turtle head on Scotty.
oh,
And on Scotty. Now, the only reason I'm saying that is because in any other timeline, Scotty is untouchable. But because of the progression Pascal has made this year, there's absolutely no way that you waste his prime years waiting on Scotty to develop. Because right now it's clear that as the roster is constructed, let's say they change everything around, then there's a place where you could say, okay, like Scotty, OG, and Pascal can materialize together. They can play together. Like they can coexist. But like as constructed, there's way too many ball dominant guys and guys who can't shoot the damn ball. So, can you imagine? Like I was just so random. Can you imagine if Scotty Barnes played with a guy like JJ Redick, who was so effective coming off ball screens and like handoffs, and Scotty loves those handoff situations and like flashing to the paint, like those type of things. But anyways, you put a little feeler out for Scotty and you see what he gets you. And I've put my mind together on like 3 different scenarios. The Orlando Magic is a perfect trade partner for the Raptors. Why? Because they have shooting available, Terrence Ross. They have guard play available, Markelle Fultz, and they have a big available, Mo Bamba. There's a major there. I think the Magic and the Raptors are perfect trade partners in that situation.
I'm sorry. I don't know if y'all see chat, but Nico saying trade Fred for Paulo Banchero. What up, Nico?
What up, Nico?
So would you say that's the package for a guy like Scotty, or?
I don't know if it's necessarily for Scotty. Let's say Gary Trent, because Gary Trent is a guy that could offer a team competitive a competitive chance this season if they really want to go for playing position. But the beauty about him is that he has an expiring deal, right? And so Mo Bamba clearly looks like he's been pushed out of the feature a little bit. Markelle Fultz is on the outside because you've got Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, RJ Hampton at the guard position, right? There's a huge logjam there. And he's been injured a lot, so I think there's another change in scenario needed to be had there. And Terrence Ross has been a guy that they've been putting feelers out for the last 2.5 years, right? Like he's not a part of that team's core. But how hilarious would it be traded back for a guy like Terrence Ross, right?
Back to the Raptors.
Was he the last Raptor to have a 50-piece, or has there been another one since then?
Yeah, it was Fred. Fred, 2021. Fred had the 54.
True.
Yeah. Fred had the 54, but it was I think it was VC, T Ross, then DeMar, then Fred, then Pascal. But yeah, you put a feeler out. I think that's the perfect trade package. I will also say, let me put this out there, right?
Oh shit.
The Chicago Bulls are also looking at moving guys, right? You said Fred home. You said Fred home to Illinois for Zach LaVine.
You're not getting Zach.
You know, would have been like, yo, man, DeMar DeRozan is great. Like, he's great. But you add DeMar DeRozan to this team, the field goal percentage goes down to 24%. Like, I'm
But
telling you,
I will say the only thing with Zach is that he's got a fat ass contract.
Fred and Gary. But he's also 27 years old. And
he fits the timeline. Ooh, actually,
exactly. He's under contract for 5 years. He's got a full max contract, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think he's getting upwards of like 40 to 45 in the final year.
Fred and Gary both need contract extensions. What this allows them to do is they get a star player, an all-star player, caliber player in Zach LaVine, under contract for 5 years. Fits Pascal's timeline. He can shoot the ball. He can create On the side, you can obviously, yeah, like as a secondary scorer to Pascal. Then you have the bird rights on OG to be able to extend him, so you don't have to worry about cap space. And now the Bulls can push their chances to compete for a playoff spot this year with Gary Trent, Fred VanVleet because they're missing Lonzo Ball. You pair that with DeMar, and those two guys are shooters, right? It's a win-win situation for both. And if Chicago doesn't win this year, those are two expiring deals, and they can go into a rebuild.
Ruben selling it, man. It's solid, but I think you're just gonna have to see what players or what other teams are willing to give for a guy like Zach, because I think that's a solid package for sure. I just don't know if it's like probably the best one, but yeah, Ruben, bro.
Draft capital. Team's gonna give him draft
a lot
capital
of
for
highs
Zach.
and lows, man. 2019 chip.
I'll give you one more scenario.
Scotty.
I give you one more scenario. Scotty Barnes, a little bit of draft capital. Gary Trent, expiring deal.
For sure.
And another piece for Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, baby. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Shea Gilgeous.
Oh man, that'd be blockbusting. I don't want to say what happened, but bro, that would be crazy.
That's with it, bro. Shea Gilgeous on the Raptors with Pascal. Good. Like I'm literally.
But that's good. Still not gonna fix your spacing. Shea gets all his stuff in the mid range.
That's all right, because like if this works out, you still have Fred. So you can still package him, or he plays off ball like he's supposed to, because he's a shooting guard and a point guard spotty, guys. Let's not forget this. And he's best when he plays alongside a secondary guard like Kyle Lowry. So I mean, him and Shea in the backcourt with Pascal and OG. Precious Achiuwa comes back. That's your starting five.
That sounds spicy, but
sounds like a guy talking with a team that's in basketball poverty. I mean, like some of these trades are like they make sense in my head, but I'm just like, damn, like
I think if you're gonna get any Canadian back, it's probably more RJ than they shave. But
yeah,
you know, I'll let you dream, brother.
I'm good with RJ, dog. I don't need RJ. I'm good. Thanks, bro. You can stay in New York. No, I'm good.
Nice.
That was a solid first bit. All right, Christian, man, what you got to say about the Celtics? Just lost 2 in a row to the Magic. You know, little ups and downs, but Robert Williams is back, so everything's trending up. I would say, regardless of the 2 losses, but you know.
Well, I think
it's about the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, Brady's good. I don't got as much to say, to be honest. I know we were talking off the like recording that like we were talking about like wish lists for our teams, and I think for the Celtics it's just health right now. I mean, I don't think Al Horford is back, and I mean Robert Williams is still being ramped up like in terms of minutes, so he's kind of sharing minutes with the likes of like I don't know, Grant Williams if he plays bigger, or like Luke Cornet or Blake Griffin. So like
they're really Cornet's the greatest shot contester ever played the fucking game, man. Greatest.
Yeah, I mean they're just missing like kind of health right now. Marcus Smart has also been out the last few games, and he's like a key piece in how that team operates defensively and even like in terms of moving the ball. Then Jason Tatum, I don't think he was out for one of the Magic games, but he was out for one game with like I think it's for his son's birthday.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure from what I heard, I think it was for his son's birthday. So I mean, it's just like things like that, like that I'm not really concerned about. I think they're still like definitely a good team, and they just need to kind of assemble some like Avengers type beat and really kind of all be healthy at the same time to like kind of start ramping together some wins. I don't really think at this point they need anyone on their team. I think it's just getting everyone playing together. Malcolm Brogdon has been starting to string together some like good minutes and some decent like stats. I mean, I saw you picked him up. I dropped him in our fantasy league to activate some players, but he's doing decent. I mean, he obviously I think has the ceiling to be even better on the Celtics team, which I think is scary for the league. And then they have like guys like Derek White that I think are like at this point like expendable, and if they wanted to make a run, like they could probably like trade him off at the trade deadline, or from what I've been hearing too, they're probably going to look to maybe even sign like more vets that can kind of come on a vet minimum and kind of support the team where it makes sense. But I think at this point, yeah, I don't think it's a lot of moving for them. I think it's just playing and being healthy that will kind of attribute to them, maybe finishing over the Bucks. But I mean, you'll talk about the Bucks in a bit that they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, let's get
So
right into it. I think my only thing I really want to praise is the defense. They've changed one single thing, and that's contesting threes. I think the stat that everybody's kind of looking at is the fact that last year they gave up the most threes in terms of attempts. But now you're seeing they're closing out, and not only that, I will say, everybody, the whole narrative has always been if we had Chris, we would have mollywopped him. But I think another thing people forget is that Brook played like I don't even know if he even played 20 games last year because he played the first game, and then which is the whole back thing for the whole year pretty much. And when you saw him get back, it wasn't really like Brook being Brook. Like, yeah, I'll give you the occasional three there, the occasional block, but you could tell there was a little bit of like, there's still a little something there. But now, Brook is in the DPOY conversation. Drew is getting some love in that. Giannis, obviously, the defense is humming, and I think the only thing that can really stop the Bucks right now is obviously like health and the fact that the big three hasn't played too much again. That probably goes more to health, but I think it's the fact that when it's Giannis and Drew, I love Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday is probably one of the most underrated players to ever play in the NBA, but takes a lot of like crazy bad shots here and there, and then
he does.
that coupled with the fact that as great as Giannis is, the fact still remains that his game is somewhat one-dimensional. You see him starting to space out a bit, but I don't like that a lot of the time it's not coming naturally. I think he kind of forces like the mid ranges, the off the dribble stuff here and there.
The
But
turnaround jumpers.
yeah,
Can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you for a sec?
go ahead.
I think a lot of that is just simply because Chris Middleton hasn't been healthy.
No doubt. I think that's the main thing too. So, obviously, as I said, health's the biggest thing. But man, getting a guy like Joe Ingles back, the
Huge.
sky's the limit here. I think seeing what that's gonna work in terms of like him and Giannis playing pick and roll. We saw how effective that was with him and Rudy, and with Joe finally playing with the real dominant big man, it's gonna be fireworks, baby. That's all I got to say about the Bucks. But now to get into it, Ruben, brother, just pick a random team and let's hear your thoughts on them.
Okay, my random team is gonna be the Brooklyn Nets.
Oh, okay.
I think KD is playing the best ball he has since his MVP year.
100%.
Kevin Durant is playing out of his mind. I think like in terms of roster construction, you looked at the team on paper, right? At the beginning of the year, we were like, okay, if this team puts it together, they're a contending team. But because of all the crap that went through and all the stuff that they went through, obviously we were like, okay, like this is a long shot. Ben Simmons is playing really well in his role. I think when you got Joe Harris back healthy, the emergence of a Utah Watanabe, Nick Claxton is having a career year. Kevin Durant is having as good of a year he's ever had. Kyrie Irving, right? Like we were talking about, he's like the X factor. You get your secondary star kind of like buying into the system. He looks as good as he has in years. Sorry, guys, I'm dealing with my sinus infection now, all congested and stuff. But like Kyrie and KD are playing perfect ball right now, and Claxton looks great. I mean, and Jacques Vaughn clearly has this team under the ropes in the locker room. And so I think all three of us would safely say the Bucks and the Celtics. Bucks and the Celtics. That's the real NBA Finals. And I think across the league, that's the consensus. That's the real NBA Finals. Considering Golden State doesn't look very good this year. Steph is barely healthy. The Western Conference is kind of like a pack load of stuff. So it's a Bucks and Celtics ting, but I wouldn't rule out Brooklyn. As Cleveland's been great. They're the number 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, but there's something to me about that team that's still missing. I still don't know how far you can get with a small backcourt. But Brooklyn is a very scary team, and I do not want to face them like early in the first round or I don't want to meet them in the second round. If I'm in the Bucks or the Celtics, I'm doing as much as I can to meet Cleveland or the 76ers rather than the Brooklyn Nets in the second round.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah,
again,
100%.
like Brooklyn is as talented as those teams, right? Kevin Durant is on a tear right now as we speak. And they have a lot of pieces, like defensively, offensively, they're very talented and they're slowly putting it together, hence their 20-12 record. Like, I did not expect to come to Christmas time and be like, yo, the Brooklyn Nets are going to be a positive team and are going to sit in the top 4 in the Eastern Conference. We all talked crap about them being a play-in team this year.
We did.
Like, they clearly don't look like they're clearly not a play-in team anymore. So, again, knock on wood injuries, because like one injury to one of their star guys, I think they're out of the conversation. But like, isn't that crazy how we constantly do that now? Like for like the last 2 or 3 seasons, we're like knock on wood health, and that was barely ever a conversation unless they were like an old player. But anyways, just a random thought. But yeah, Brooklyn's dangerous right now. They're dangerous. They're putting it together. That's a scary team. That's a scary, scary team. I don't want anything to do with them in the playoffs.
No doubt. I mean, yeah. When you looked at last year, they were at the top of the conference prior to like KD's injury, which kept him out for a long while, and obviously
Mhm.
like the whole Kyrie thing. So, man, I'm not gonna lie. I just want to see Ben shoot one jumper, man, and make that shit. I want to see him swish that shit. But alright, Chin, choose a team and let's hear your riff, buddy.
I think I want to talk about the Pels. I think
Yes.
I really like that team. I think they were at the top of the conference. I think maybe last week, and now the top of the Western Conference is consolidated of really 3 teams essentially. But the Pels look nice. I mean, I think it's one thing for me. I have Jonas Valanciunas in my fantasy team, and he's starting to heat up only because Zion is out.
Because Zion's out, man.
But
This guy was trying to like leverage Jonas as like a solid piece for like
bro,
some crazy
Jonas
assets.
is solid, bro. This is the thing though. Like, I think that's like one of the best problems any team could have in the NBA is like having too many good players and not knowing what to do with them. Because I mean, if you have Jonas Valanciunas only playing 25 minutes on your team, like, and you're like the top of the conference, that is, I think,
Well, that's an
in
outlier,
some
yeah.
ways, that's like
Team's deep.
that team is hella deep, and like they have players like Trey Murphy, for example, who are just
Yeah.
coming out of nowhere.
Trey is
Like, I mean, not coming out of nowhere, but obviously emerging as like a solid role player. Herb Jones is like still developing.
Herb Jones, 3 positions in fantasy, beautiful.
That's
Yeah.
lockout.
And I mean, he's not even healthy yet. He hasn't played a game yet, right?
No.
I think
Yeah.
he should. They're saying out at least 2 more games. I think this game today is the second one. So
Yeah.
Like, I think, to be honest, they're the like most systematic team in the West right now. And if like, I think my take is like, if the Warriors really can't get it together, then I think they're the team that's going to make it to the NBA Finals at this point.
Ooh, hoo, 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 hoo.
I just don't think I see
Ooh.
like
That's it.
like I could see maybe like the Grizzlies or the Nuggets, obviously, with those teams being like built like around a solid core that like has been developed as well, much like the Pelicans. But I personally think the Pelicans just have like way too much talent to like be beaten by any of those teams. Like, they have talent 1 through 5, but I need Jonas to be free. I needed him. I think
Send him to the Raptors.
yeah, send him back. Or just like give him like this guy, like when he has his minutes though, plays like
He's a top 10 center.
yeah, he's like a borderline.
Yeah.
He can play like a borderline all-star like when he is getting minutes. But like Larry Nance is eating up his minutes because he kind of just
Yeah.
pace
But
on the floor.
those Larry Nance and Zion minutes are nasty.
Yeah, he's
Yeah, I just don't think Jonas fits like what they do, their style of play
No.
anymore.
exactly. He's just too slow.
That
But,
he
That's
doesn't
too bad
stretch
because he
his
could shoot the
bat well.
ball. Like I mean, didn't he just have a 6 3-point game like the other night?
I think it was 8.
Was it 8?
Oh no, sorry. I think it was 3 or 8. It was 7 or 8.
It was something insane that your starting center would not do.
Bro, I'll pull it up right now. I was like, God damn, this guy's back. And I was like,
Bro, Jonas had a game like this last season, and that's what I was basing off the Pels being, because I was like, dude, okay, if the Pels are going to be really good this year, a lot of it hinges on Jonas's ability to coexist with Zion. But it's like he spends a lot of time in the paint. But like, what if you just made him a paint defender slash like spacing option? Like, there's literally no
Come
problem
on
with
now,
that.
he's not Brooke Lopez.
Oh, he's
No
definitely not Brook
Valanciunas isn't
Lopez.
Brooke Lopez. Come on now.
Well,
Okay, but
Brook Lopez is special though this year. Let's be real. But
he's,
like,
he's
I will say,
but yo, he like
That would be the
37,
big goal.
18, and 5, bro. Like that's not like a fluke, bro. That's like those are like big numbers. Like seven
yeah,
threes in a
That's not
game.
a
Like
fluke. That's what happens when your number one and number two options are playing.
no, but like what I'm saying is like I think there is like sort of timeline or sort of like probability that like Zion and him can fit together. I think they just need to figure that out. But
yeah, agreed.
like it's the matter of if they want to, because obviously Nance is showing like good promise with how he plays with Zion. But I do think with how much of a weapon Jonas is, it's like why would they not utilize him after seeing how much he can like put out for that team, right?
Yeah, I like to see him increase his like 3-point shooting volume because I think the numbers are always great, but it's the fact that it's always on like 2 or maybe 3 attempts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think with somebody who commands as much gravity as Zion, I would like to see more like kind of pick and pops with those two. I think that could be something really crazy. But yeah,
agreed.
for Jonas.
I believe in him. For Jonas.
The team I'm gonna talk about is the team Christian mentioned, the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, you know, we'll all of us here will always have that slight tie. You know, can y'all imagine? Jaw had Vancouver rocking, Desmond Bain had the city rocking. We got the hometown kid Brandon Clark. This Grizzlies team is just one. I think a lot of the reason that they aren't as highly touted is the fact that they're not one of those teams that had like a crazy like addition. You know, they didn't get a Zion back. They didn't get, you know, Donovan Mitchell. But Desmond Bain, that dude, I know he hasn't been playing the last bit, but Desmond Bain, Tyrese Halliburton, Herb Jones, they're all these guys that are showing why, as much as like the one and done prospect is like this highly coveted, you know, you can maximize the potential kind of guy. It shows that the guys that stay a little longer in school, way more mature, way more ready, way more able to contribute to a winning situation now. And Desmond Bain is like, I don't think it's crazy to say fully healthy. Jaw and Desmond Bain are one of, if not the top, like backcourt duos in the league. Fully heartedly believe that. And not only that, Jaren Jackson Jr., career high in blocks per game, and he's fouling less. You know, that I think that's always been the big red flag with him. That and the fact he doesn't like average that many rebounds despite being 6'11". So Jaren Jackson Jr. is starting to have a career year. I think if you think about it, there hasn't been this season alone, the big three hasn't played together, and they're right in the top of the West. So it, you know, hollows are free, as according to John. I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest things, sorry, not to interrupt you, but like one of the biggest things is there was a lot of disrespect around Ja not really being influential to the team's success because, you know, there's that stint where he was injured and like they were still winning.
Yeah,
but
that is
this dude,
crazy.
this dude like has propelled this team to so many wins this season. Like I mean I got him on my fantasy team too, and that's one of the nicest things. Like he like is a very underrated player in terms of playmaking. Like I think is averaging somewhere probably around 9-10 assists, definitely.
Yeah, I think he's
And
close. He's probably close to like 27, 7, and 9 or something like that.
yeah, like he's playing on like he's playing on an MVP level again, you know,
No
like
doubt. Yeah, I
but
think the thing with Jaw is like, I find that a lot of times your number one player isn't necessarily your culture setter. Like he's the face of the franchise for sure, but you look at the Miami Heat, LeBron was never really the culture setter. That was a guy like Udonis Haslem. You know, those guys that are ingrained into the culture, fully into it. Jaw is that, and the fact that he's the face of the franchise. I think he like completely embodies that whole, you know, Memphis mentality, you know, grit and grind. Love to see it. And yeah, I think when you look at the landscape of the West, which we've constantly talked about, I think as much as Ruben mentioned that, you know, Celtics Bucks is the NBA Finals, Man, a Grizzlies Pelicans conference finals would be fucking electric. That
I
would
think
be,
Zion and Ja.
oh
Jeez,
my gosh.
Ja.
this is an NBA
Zion
2K
and Ja.
prediction right here. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh,
But Ruben,
damn.
let's hear your next team, baby.
I wanted to. Okay, I'll get to one of you guys out there, but I wanted to talk about the Blazers. But like, I can't help but revisit my prediction at the beginning of the year, saying that the Dallas Mavericks were gonna make the NBA Finals.
They got Kemba.
Yeah, guys, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry you guys took my bet. But yeah, clearly I was wrong. I clearly underrated the impact of Jalen Brunson, and we're seeing his impact with the Knicks now, and just how special of an impact player he is. He might not be like a superstar caliber guy with his talents, but like the things that you love about Brunson, and Raptors fans can attest to this, like um the amount that you love Kyle Lowry for, right? The amount that you love a guy like Marcus Smart for, the amount that you love a guy like PJ Tucker for, or those kind of players, right, who do the dirty work, who can impact the game like without having to score or defend, is a guy like Jalen Brunson. He does all the dirty stuff, but he is also a secondary scorer. He is a guy who's a secondary playmaker, and that's why they had so much success with him alongside Luka. Was he took off a lot of that pressure. And you lose a guy like that, you expect a guy like Dinwiddie to do that, who's not necessarily a natural playmaker as opposed to Jalen Brunson. And then Christian Wood, who really hasn't settled into a role yet this year. And a lot of the guys who are getting the ball in these late game situations when teams are doubling on Luka, a lot of them are making the wrong decisions, right? Like the ball tends to find a guy like Maxi Kleber, who's now out, I think, indefinitely, right?
Yeah.
He's out for a while, and he
just
was a
to,
big piece.
Backtrack a bit. I think Christian Wood's starting now, so
He is
hopefully
starting. He
starts
started
to
the
get,
last
like,
game,
some good like reps in.
which I think always made sense, right? I think Christian Wood should have always been starting. We both talked about this, about like Christian Wood coming off the bench is a nice role, but it's only if he's producing in that role. But if he's not, then what's the point of having them there? I think the switch up is perfect because clearly the Mavs lack offensive punch at the moment because everything is just being flown through Luka. So I think what's really important here is to say like they got to switch up. I think there's a trade that has to be had for Dallas. Right, they need another playmaker. They picked up Kemba, and hopefully he can ease into a role there. And he is more of a natural playmaker. I just don't know how much he has in the tank compared to previous years. But I would like to see him successful with Dallas. I would like to see Jason Kidd be a little bit more creative in his offensive sets, especially late game situations, because a lot of the games that they're losing are late game. And it's just simply by teams doubling him and getting the ball out of his hands. And it ends up finding a guy like Dorian Finney-Smith who throws it into the third row. Or when a guy flashes high post like Maxi Kleber, when he slips the screen, he gets in the high post and he throws it to the opposite bench. Like, and there's been multiple times, like, have we seen like Luka after these plays, after these turnovers, and he's just frustrated beside himself.
Bucks game, that was nutty.
Yeah.
I saw a thing just to quickly like add my 2 cents. It was this whole breakdown of the fact that the Bucks knew the play like to a T, and then Luka was trying to get another thing like called or whatever, but whistle got blown, had to go right into it.
Yeah,
that's what happens when you have a heliocentric offense.
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? Like we saw how Harden was so successful at during the regular seasons, and I made this comparison in the last pod. Luka now is very much the Harden and the Rockets, right? Whereas the heliocentric offense does whatever he wants, kick out, off, boom, boom, that's great. But when you double that player and you're forcing other guys to make plays in situations where they have to put the ball down on the floor, a lot of times you're not going to find success. And I think in this NBA, you can't have a really heliocentric offense like you could maybe 5 or 6 years ago because teams are just better scout. Like they're just more equipped now. Like there's been so many years of this kind of offense where you can just be like, okay, we can prepare for this because once this guy gets the ball in the high post, he's not going to take a jumper at the free throw line because that's a stupid shot. That's a low percentage shot versus getting the guy with the ball and making a play or forcing a foul or getting a layup because you know, with analytics too, right? You start to overthink basketball a little bit now too, right? Like the long twos are not the great shot, but when you realize like a guy has an open shot at the free throw line, analytically it's not great, but like that's an open shot.
You
And
think
so, a lot of this conversation I think is like Dallas is not constructed well, like in terms of their roster to have the success that I initially thought they would have had, especially if they were going to run a heliocentric offense with Luca. Because I thought Christian Wood and Spencer Dinwiddie were going to fit into that role nicely that Brunson did for so many years, for at least last year and the year before. But I underrated how much of an impact he made on this team. So hopefully they find their way. Um, I'm also hearing stuff like they're looking for a second star, which I think any team would be. You know, they'd be in the market for a second star. But if there's a team that absolutely needs a second star, it's a team like Dallas.
But if
a lot of
there's
Bradley
also
Beal.
a team that has the absolute worst possible chance of getting a star, I think that's also Dallas.
It's also Dallas. Yeah,
Next to the
100%.
Rams.
I
I don't know.
disagree.
I don't know.
Well, maybe nowadays maybe it's a bit different, but I think the history shows that it's been pretty hard to get people to come to
Hey man,
Canada.
they don't need to get a second star.
They
They
don't.
just need to play my boy Jaden Hardy, man. 10 points in 3 minutes, but also 2 fouls.
I think a lot of it though is like also unlocking like Christian Wood's potential. He's like had like spurts and like he's had really
Yeah.
huge games for the Mavericks, but
Mm.
I think people forget like really only 2 years ago he was like all-star
He was 20
potential
and 10. Yeah.
before he went down with like injuries and like just kind of didn't make the cut for all-star. Like, well, I think he would actually been highly considered as an all-star if he actually like was able to play for it 2 years ago. But yeah, I think a lot of it is unlocking his potential because I think they like honestly like got him for nothing on that team, and they still have room to like add around Luca and him. But I do think Christian Wood has the potential to be like a second star, maybe not a second superstar, but someone that can complement Luca if developed properly. But I think a lot of it is still predicating around Luca's game, like to a point where it's suffocating. Like when you compare Luca to Harden and like how he used to be compared to like LeBron James, I think that in its own sense, there's already something wrong there because I would rather take like a LeBron James type player over Harden, like 9 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just like to. I just want to add to your Christian Wood point. Like it's like that's what he was brought in to be. Like he was brought in to be the second option. Like he was a guy that was averaging like 20 and 10, right? Like or like 18 and 8 or something like that. Like he's a guy who's very capable of carrying a second level of your offense. And for him to come off the bench, right? I think it's just a disservice to his talent and a disservice to your team because like your roster is predicated around Luca, like you mentioned. But like the beauty of having a Christian Wood on your team is that he can also score from anywhere on the floor. He can make stuff happen. And I think they got to get away from the heliocentric offense because right now, a lot of what they're doing with Christian Wood, a lot of this action is in post ups, handoffs, off the dribble stuff, and like pick and pop. And like instead of being like, okay, here's the ball and create for us in these situations, which he's a guy that's very capable of doing, and he can play make off the top of the key as well. So the problem is like they're just not they're not balancing that style of play between Luca and the other players, right? And the guys on the roster. So um, just use Christian Wood for what you brought him in for, man. I think that's pretty
Hey,
simple.
this is where the comeback comes, man. This is where it's gonna come. He's gonna go back to 20 and 10.
Hope so. I have him on my fantasy teams too, so that'd be nice.
Me too.
I think my last take is that I think if there was a team to turn it around after the All-Star break, it's them. I think
Ooh, I like
Yeah.
it.
Good take. Good take.
I think it's like it's not obviously paralleling what Boston Celtics did because no one can do that. But I mean, I
That
do
was crazy.
no, I do think they're a team that just has so much potential, and they have like if on any given day you could say they have the best player in the league on their team, like in some ways. I mean, we can all argue that, but Luca is in that like top.
He's in that stratosphere. Yeah.
But yeah,
All right, Chin. Let's hear you talk about a team. Actually, I don't know if you were thinking about this team, but I personally would like to hear you talk about the Kings. I don't know if that's what you're thinking about, but yeah, that's my two
Kings.
cents.
I actually have my like eyes on the Timberwolves because I have like a few players on my fantasy teams. But I mean, we can if you want to talk about the Kings, I'll talk a little bit on the Timberwolves. We can kind of duel both of those teams.
Word, but I mean, what you gonna say about the Timberwolves? They ass.
Bro, I don't know. Like,
They're the same record as the Mavericks, brother. They're better than the Warriors.
they're the other
They
team that I
hedged their
think
full future on a guy that can't play fucking offense. They they.
Hey, yo, you guys want to hear a perfect trade?
Oh my gosh, let's hear it.
Carl Anthony Towns for Trey Young.
Oh man,
Think about it. Think about it. Think about it. Think about it. Think about it.
Trae Young.
Karl Anthony Towns.
Trae Young is just Atlanta though. He's the jaw. He's the culture guy.
Oh no, please no. Apparently he wants out if they're not gonna make a serious run at the playoffs this year.
See, I think maybe the Nate McMillan has run its course, because even from the
I
beginning,
agree on that too.
that was a little iffy because it's a defensive coach with a guy who you'll take out because he's a defensive liability. So I would hope that they would do that before Trey like considers like requesting a trade or anything like that. But if that were the case, I can see that happening.
It's an interesting trade.
If you
I
had to
think
trade the superstar,
yeah,
Trey
I
Young,
mean-
Rudy, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, DeJounte Murray.
that do low key sound kind of nice.
that does sound nice.
Dog, yo.
I almost think, to be honest, like in that situation, I think the Hawks win that trade. I just think like Trae Young is like, I wouldn't say he's a question mark. Obviously, he's proven as like a superstar player, but like I don't know if Rudy Gobert can anchor a defense enough to have Trae Young on his team. And like, I mean, Anthony Edwards is a plus defender, but still, like with that team not being as deep as some of the teams in the league, I think like it propels the Hawks into like probably like playoff contention again. And I think the Minnesota Timberwolves either like also propel or they like hit poverty as well.
They're gonna hit poverty. Did y'all
what
see
trade-
that meme though? The
Which one?
Moneyball meme. It's like, I got this guy. His name's Walker Kessler. Does all the same shit as Rudy, but he's on a rookie contract, and he's actually got somewhat of an offensive game.
Bro, you know what Trey Young does though instantly on your team is he makes Rudy Gobert a positive offensive player.
That's
true.
true.
He's gonna throw him lobs for sure.
Yeah, the pick and roll, like I said before, Rudy Gobert was actually one of the best in the percentiles of converting in the pick and roll situation, regardless of what we say about his finishing or like the fact that he literally can't post up anybody and go for a jump hook. Like
You don't
that's
even,
actually so
you don't
embarrassing.
even dunk.
I know, dog. But that's what I'm saying is like Trey Young is that good at being able to put guys in the right position to be successful. And like looking back at it, sorry to like interrupt and like compare, but like on the Atlanta side, like DeJounte and Trey don't look like a very good pairing. They're not a great pairing together. And so I don't know, someone actually posted that on Twitter and I thought that was really interesting and I just want to put that to you guys, but like carry on with your Timberwolves.
No, I just think like they're at a point where like I wouldn't say they have an opportunity to still be a good team. I think that's the biggest thing. But I think what really like has been interesting to me is that out of their last 5 wins, because they're 5-5 in the last 10, I think out of their last 3 when Rudy Gobert was out and Naz Reid was starting, they won 3 games. And then Rudy Gobert came back last night and they lost. So I do think like I don't have positive takes on them by all means, but I do think like I mean they already sold Walker Kessler, so you can't go back in the future and fix that. But I do think they're still sitting on like Naz Reid and like kind of like a more fluid offense that
Nathan Knight.
I don't know. Like I don't know how they fix that. Like, but I do think they have like still like in terms of their whole like roster, like they have the genetic makeup to like still fix a lot and probably like secure like yeah, I think they could secure a top 6 spot if they were to like really string it together and figure out their system. But I do think like a trade is required. I think I'd like probably get rid of a guy like D'Lo. I think he still has value around the league, but I don't know if like he's the most positive player for that team beside like Anthony Edwards. I think there's
Elo for Gary Trent Jr. Cough, cough.
I don't even know. I feel like I don't know. I
So
think
Rudy's gonna have to account for the fact that Gary Trent jumps every steal. He tries to jump every route.
more of a guy like Marcus Smart, honestly. Like obviously it's not Marcus Smart.
Or this is the person that y'all drinking the Kool-Aid on.
Killian
What would
Hayes.
Killian Hayes be like?
Yo, hold on. That's not who. I'm not saying he's that high up. He ain't worth D'Lo level number.
Oh, I don't even mean for
Hayes.
D'Lo, but
Liam Kool-Aid Hayes.
Kool-Aid Hayes.
Kool-Aid Hayes. Oh my gosh.
Yo, man. That's hilarious. Oh.
My
I
only
think they
thing
got.
to add is
That's all
that if you just think about what this roster would look like if they don't do the Rudy trade, I think they're in the conversation with the kind of Nuggets, the Pelicans kind of teams, all full heartedly.
Yeah.
The culture that was set there, the overall depth that they had, they just
Vanderbilt and Beasley are playing so well with Utah.
Oh my
Like, imagine
gosh.
unleashing those guys with this team.
Beasley's a freaking disgusting. And again, Walker Kessler is looking not able to anchor his defense like Rudy for sure, but when it comes to shot blocking, I don't think he's like too far behind. I think he's like
I mean,
top 10 in the league.
Yeah, like like he doesn't even get like starting minutes yet, and I think he like, in my opinion, plays on some nights and like
Yeah, that's the thing with the
almost
Jazz.
most nights.
It's
He
like
plays
a
similar to
pretty
like
well-rounded.
like I was saying, I feel like he plays just as good in some ways as like Jabari Smith Jr. right now, and he was a top 3 pick.
I want to. Obviously, it's not like the best kind of stat, but his per 36 numbers must be crazy. Then
It must be.
Walker Kessler.
Oh, that's fucking. Oh my god. Okay.
What's up?
The per 36 numbers 13 and pretty much 4 blocks.
4 blocks, bro.
Yeah, I mean the thing about Walker Kessler that makes him so good is that he is an agile big too, right? Like that's the thing that Rudy Gobert can't cover.
That allegation pretty quickly.
Yeah, like Rudy Gobert can't cover 5 feet outside of the paint, right? Like, and so Walker Kessler making the comparison's hilarious, but I will say that the Jazz do look like they have a better chance to make the playoffs than the Timberwolves at this moment.
At this moment, I agree.
I would say.
I mean, they're 1916 sitting 7th in the Western Conference. If they go into the play-in, they would actually have to play the Timberwolves. Can you imagine the freaking newspapers, like, you know what I mean? Like the headlines, the tweets, like NBA Twitter going crazy. The two teams that traded with each other, and the Utah Jazz beats the Timberwolves in a play-in.
Okay, you know about that though? Here's the thing. That's the perfect situation to relocate Minnesota. You know,
To Vancouver.
Come to Vancouver.
Seattle?
Or
I
Seattle.
don't want to go to Vancouver. I do not want to watch Rudy Gobert.
I don't give a fuck about Rudy Gobert. I would watch for Anthony Edwards though, man.
Yeah, I would watch for Anthony Edwards.
Bro, I'd rather watch Evan Fournier.
You mean the fucking bum who doesn't even play?
Oh, I'm just kidding. Yeah, but Cam Reddish
Neither
doesn't
does Cam,
play
though.
either. Oh man. Okay, yeah. You know what though? I will say I would watch Anthony Edwards every day.
Oh yeah.
I'd
He
like
is so kills.
But heading from the Timberwolves. I mean, Christian and I got a little bet. I think it's that. Was it that you think they're going to be top 6? And I think
the Kings.
Yeah, because we had a little side bet, didn't we?
Oh yeah, I think I mentioned
6.
like I think I even mentioned at the beginning of the year too that I thought they were going to be a play-in team, and that was like, I think that was a hot take at the time, and now we have a side bet now that they're top 6, right?
Oh wait, I think it was that, and I think mine is that. Oh man, this is like the ultimate pessimist. Even though like I really respect what they're doing, is that it's probably not gonna age well. But I didn't think they'd make the. I don't think they'll make the playoffs because I think if they get into the play-in, could get a little chippy. But that's the play-in. Anything goes there. But to talk about the Kings, it's cool. What they're doing, being able to kind of like exercise these demons of the better part of 2 decades almost. It's great to see. The only thing though is I think this roster is kind of, it's sort of in that in the situation of like a Raptors, a Wizards, a Bulls, where I think they're heading towards the middle more than like towards contention, really. You know, I think you're seeing how this is what happens, I think, a lot of the time with new teams where the first part is really good, but then once people really start to get like the whole picture, seeing how they operate, I'm not saying the Kings are going to fall off a cliff, but I would say the second part of their schedule might be a little harder with everybody now kind of saying like, okay, you know, you're going to get a lot of DHOs. You know that Fox is going to be as like shifty as ever. Sabonis is playing like an all-star, but now you're kind of like being able to key in a little bit more on that from the get-go. But yeah, overall, you know, I don't think there's anybody in the world who would say that, man, I hate that the Kings are doing this well, unless maybe you're a Lakers fan. But it's definitely the best story I think so far this season. I just think that I don't want to, like, I understand why people are drinking the Kool-Aid on it, but I just think as of now, the projection of this roster is more towards, you know, Sabonis can't get away from the mediocrity. You know, I think they're heading more towards being a team that will get to the playoffs, but will rarely win the series or like rarely make it past the second round, I think. However, if OG does get traded, I would love to see him in Sacramento. I'm not gonna lie. Traded for Keegan Murray, you know, throw the picks or whatever.
Yeah.
It could be solid.
Keegan Murray.
Come on, Ruben. I'm not saying Keegan Murray's on OG's level, but Keegan Murray, he's another one of those, like, I think he's played multiple years in college, but overall, you see him on the floor, he don't look too much like a rookie.
I mean, he's starting.
Yeah. Kevin
I
Herter's
like
like
Keegan
solid.
Murray. I like Keegan Murray, but if I'm gonna get draft capital and a player somewhere else, I'm definitely not looking at Sacramento at the top of my list. That I'm just saying. I
True.
think, but
you think Masai's gonna send him to the poverty lands?
he could. I mean, this is a
I would
businessman
hope
we're
he
talking
don't do
about.
that. Because OG's
What
the
do you-
kind of like, he probably wouldn't complain, but it's also like,
So we gotta take the poverty.
I want to see
We
OG
gotta-
play some meaningful basketball, man.
I
Yeah,
think
no.
where he goes would be to a playoff team that
No
absolutely
doubt.
needs
You don't
services
trade for
sure.
OG
So
if
the
you're
Kings
like
makes
looking
sense.
to, if you're in the midst of your rebuild. OG's like one of, or like, you know, one of the final pieces you add before you're hitting the ground running, for sure.
If I think
the
a team that does have some of the best pieces to offer for OG is Portland,
Yeah,
and I would
I
pay
think,
anything to get Shaden Sharp on Toronto Raptors.
oh yeah, I
uniform.
saw. I think it was Shaden, GP, and I think another one of the young guys. But I'm not gonna lie, I do
Yeah.
that. I think.
Right.
Oh man, can you
Shaden Sharp
imagine
is
how
promising.
frustrating having to deal with a wing duo of Jeremy Grant and OG?
That's not fun.
Let's transition right into it. Then the Trailblazers, Ruben. I know you say you want to like hand it off, but I want to hear your thoughts on it, brother. How do you
Yeah, no,
about
I
the
think
Trailblazers?
okay. So I think Portland is in a really good spot. I really like what they've done
Mm.
in terms of putting the right pieces around him. Like they've completely switched up that roster to be like, okay, let's stay away from the small ball type of stuff that we're going with and transition to a team with heavy wings, really good defensive players around. Dame, Jeremy Grant is one of those OG Anunoby players. I don't think he does it as well, but Jeremy Grant is a very good player who can defend multiple positions and then get his own offense off. You pair that with Anthony Simons, you're allowing him to develop. Like I think Portland is in a really good spot where they're trying to develop their young guys, right? At the service level, they're developing their young guys. And then just above that layer is they're still trying to compete because you still have a superstar like Dame Lillard. You still have a really good center in Yusuf Nurkic. And you have an all-star-ish caliber player in Jeremy Grant. Right? And then you have really good pieces. Like, let's not forget, they've still got Josh Hart in the building. They got Gary Payton, who still, I don't believe, has played a game yet.
No. Justice
And so
Winslow's
when-
looking like he's having a bit of resurgence too.
Winslow is having a breakout year. I think, like, at least, like you said, resurgence, right? Like, there were many times where in Miami he was looked at a guy like he could be a part of their future. He looks like he's having a really good season, and he's going to be a part of what they're doing. And then you talk about the young bucks like Anthony Simon, Shaden Sharp. I'm missing a few here. What's the name? Nasir Little, right? The other young boys. So Portland is in a really good spot. Like they're in the eighth seed. People can say that they're in poverty mode as well. But the reason I don't want to say that is because there's so much promise with their young guys. Like the other half of their roster are young players, young prospects, right? And the difference is there's really no foreign territory for them. They know that Dame Lillard is going to stay a Blazer unless, like, he miraculously is like, oh, I don't want to play here anymore, because all he's done is talk about how much he wants to stay in Portland. And so they're continuing their winning ways while allowing these young guys to develop. And someone could argue a wall and say, hey, Toronto's doing the same thing. Why don't you say the same thing about them? It's also because of the fact it's like poor asset management, like on behalf of the front office. Like that roster constructed is not good. What Portland has done is they completely revamped and retooled their roster around Dame to be more defensive, to fit the things that Chauncey Billups wants to do on both ends of the floor, while maximizing their talent and developing. Like they're doing every facet of like front office stuff really well. Right, so that's why this roster is set up to be a playoff team, but also allow these young guys to kind of go off and do their thing. Like Toronto's not built that way. Hence, Scotty Barnes struggling, Pascal Siakam having to score 50 points against the Knicks just to crawl away with the win. So like you can make those comparisons, but I just want to say I just really like the direction Portland's going in. And even if they don't win anything during Dame's timeline, they can say they put a lot of asses in the seats. They played a lot of winning basketball. Dame's a Hall of Famer. And then they can move on to developing their young guys.
No doubt. I'm excited to watch Dame in February, man. That's going to be an electric game. But yeah, I think the only thing I really have to add is that I understand the development. I will say though, it hasn't looked too good the past couple of games with like Anthony and Dame, because I think Anthony's, not that he's trying to usurp Dame in any way, but I think you see how he's a step above CJ in terms of his time in Portland right now, where he's been a guy that's been able to handle the keys for a good part of like basically a full season if you include like this time Dame missed now along with last year. So I think the only concern is like everybody fully buying in wholeheartedly. Not that Anthony Simons isn't, but I think it was the first Oklahoma game where they had the little miscue and then they ended up just causing a turnover and completely wasting that possession. And it's not that Anthony Simons isn't getting like a big head or anything like that, but you do see that as a potential thing that could play a factor. But when I'm looking at the Blazers, I think they were top of the Western Conference for the first bit of the season, and obviously Dame went down, and
yeah,
all this success is again with the fact that Gary Payton hasn't played a single game. I'm excited to see Gary Payton play some backup center minutes. It's gonna be crazy, but yeah, it's
that'll be fun.
Portland's them for sure. I can think they could definitely be a team that even if they end up in the play-in, they're not a team you should take lightly at all, for sure.
Agreed.
All right, Chin, you got a team you want to touch on next year?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I think the Clippers are one team that I think deserves some praise right now. I think like they're not obviously living up to the hype. But, like I think when John Wall got signed, everyone was like, "Oh fuck, it's Clippers time, baby!" Like they're about to hit the top of the West. It's gonna be like them and I don't know who else they were putting them up against, but they already had them signed up for the NBA Finals. But I do think it's nice to see Kawhi Leonard like starting to return to form. I think he had a 30-point game.
Yeah, he had his first 30-point game in like a year and a bit.
Bro, like that's awesome to see. I think Kawhi Leonard, in my opinion, like I'm like I don't know how to put this lightly. I like love Kawhi like more than maybe like 90% of people how they feel about him, because I think people don't obviously put him in that upper echelon anymore with how much he's been absent. But I do think when he is healthy, he's like still in the top echelon of players. Like just with how easily like he can impact a floor, even if he's like I don't know, only giving you 16 a night. Like the team is still winning with him on the floor, And I don't know. I think they could be scary if like obviously it's always been this talk with the Clippers like oh it could be really scary if Kawhi is going to play the whole season, and he does look like he's like still like obviously going to have to deal with like a lot of load management. He did have like was the plantar I don't
Fasciitis?
fasciitis. It's like an injury that is like lingering and something that's not really curable at this point for him. But I do think it is like gonna be scary if he can at least like be ready for the playoffs, because I mean even Paul George at this point in my opinion is underrated. I think he's still like top 3 in his position for sure. And then I mean John Wall is John Wall, but I respect him. Zubac is obviously like I think also an underrated player. I mean, I think it's been a while
Have like
since we
20 and 20 like a couple weeks ago.
bro, it was more than that. It was like 31 and 29, wasn't it? Or
Oh
something like
wait,
that.
yeah, it was something crazy like that.
Bro was almost at a 30-30. Like I think they just have like a roster that's always been so like tight knit. They've always been able to string it together. And then like if that stringing together can like turn into obviously having your stars healthy, like I don't see why they couldn't like still be like a Western Conference like contender.
No doubt. Yeah, no, I think it's all just health at this point.
It's
There's not
always
really
health.
anything much else to add. Yeah. I I guess the team we haven't talked about yet is one of like I guess the if there's a team a lot of people maybe hopped on the bandwagon on might be this team is the Cavs. You know, as we've mentioned earlier, we don't really know how far this backcourt can go or will go. I will say the one thing though I think is that I don't think this year's their year, but when you stack them up against like all of these young teams, they're right at the top of it. These Memphises, the Clevelands, even like the Cat or the Celtics still to an extent. My Sands like and Al Horford. When you look at these young teams that are coming up, scary hours for sure. The one thing with the Cavs, I think it's that we haven't really seen Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. I think fully mesh yet. I think it's still a little ticky tacky here and there. Where obviously Donovan Mitchell, I think, should be the number one option. But Garland coming off a 20 and 10 season, you're not going to just kind of easily ease off of that. So I don't think that's like a big problem, but that's just something I've noticed. And then I think their only real problem right now is probably depth. You know, Kevin Love at this point in time, it's not that he shouldn't be your six man, but having to put that much trust into a 35-year-old is a little concerning. Karis LeVert's obviously hit and miss. He's either giving you 40 or 5. No
He's the
routine.
biggest hit and miss. I gotta say it.
Yeah.
100%,
This
man.
dude fucking like he can look like the best player in the NBA and also look like he
True.
should not be.
Hey, fuck it. Also,
Yeah.
yo, I swear, Karis LeVert, come playoff time, hometown, he's going to be him. He's going to have a solid 10, 2, and 3.
And 2 and 3.
No, but when you look at this roster, they haven't even added Ricky Rubio back yet, who's still like getting back from it. And we saw how prior to that injury, he was having a really solid resurgence. So I think the depth's coming back for sure. And they're another team that's been hit with injuries. You know, not the sexiest of names that have been injured. You know, Lamar Stevens, who's been who's a solid wing defender, has been missing the past couple games. Dylan Windler doesn't even really play for them. Ricky Rubio, who I just mentioned. So the Cavs, I think, are a team that have all the time in the world to really just get things right, get themselves ready for these next few years, and I think really propel Cleveland back into Believeland, I think.
I think they moved Karis LeVert at the deadline.
I think if there's anybody that gets moved on that team, it's probably Karras for sure.
I wouldn't also rule out Kevin Love in those conversations.
I think
Even though
Okoro will
he's like the
probably be a
perfect
sweetener too to get if they want to get like a higher tier player.
Yeah, I wouldn't go against them. Yeah, to try and move K Love, even though he's like kind of a core piece to Cleveland now as a veteran. But it's also like you were talking about contracts, right? We're talking about contracts and ability to match contracts, right? Like so that's why Kevin Love was his name is probably involved in deals. Coro is a younger guy who teams do like on that sense. Karis LeVert. I don't know what that kind of package gets you. It might be to another team that who requires a secondary playmaker like Karis LeVert, who will actually be a secondary playmaker versus here we're just gonna throw you in this role and just make the best of it when he's a guy that clearly needs the ball to be successful.
Here's a
Um,
crazy idea. Would y'all do Jay? Would Cleveland consider Jay Crowder for Karis LeVert? Obviously
that's
a little
actually a really
step
good
down
deal.
from like offensive versatility, but Jay Crowder defends, gives you that three, gives you that goodness.
It's a very good deal, and I think Phoenix just needs another guy who can create, right? Because right now it's a lot of it is Devin Booker and Chris Paul.
Yeah, ain't nothing
Where
coming
other
out of
teams they
Pompey
have,
though.
yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? Like I think you just try to make the best of these deals, and if you can get Karis LeVert and Okoro back um
I
for
think,
Jay Crowder,
yeah, they just need
why not?
solid. I think just as great as Kevin Love is, I think they just need more vets. I think they just need more experienced players for sure.
Yeah,
But are there any other teams y'all want to talk? We haven't even really talked about the Sixers. I mean,
Fuck the
I don't think there's
Sixers.
much. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Hardest researches is cool, and Embiid's playing at an MVP level.
I only have one team left to talk about, at least
Max,
on my end, that I really want to talk
let's hear it,
about.
bro.
It's the Denver Nuggets.
Oh my gosh.
I think I
Aaron
might.
Gordon.
I think I might give Jokic his third straight MVP. If they finish first in the Western Conference this year, and he's averaging the same numbers he is right now, I might have to give him his third MVP. I might have to give him his third MVP because, as great as Luka is this year, and Tatum on the other end for Boston, like he's playing unbelievable basketball. But I don't know. It's hard for me to go against a guy who's averaging like what 22 and 12 and like whatever it
And
is right now. Like
whenever you're in conversations with Wilt,
there's
that's
absolutely
otherworldly stuff.
like what did they have that one night? It was 40, 27, and 10.
Yeah. Oh my, that was fucking insane.
That's I don't know. That's just dude, Yoke
That's
and the way
2K
he
numbers,
does it.
bro.
Yeah, that exactly. And like I'm stuttering here because like you think about the way Jokic plays, it's like none of it is necessarily flashy by athleticism standards, but the way that he passes the basketball, just how smart he is at using his body, being able to find nicks and knacks in the offense. Like he can manipulate the way the game is played. Like he controls the pace of the game. For a center to be able to take the ball off the board and go full court and play make from the top of the key, right? And shoot the three ball the way that he does, dominating the post. Like he's actually a very underrated post defender as well, just because he's a bigger body and he does have a positive wingspan. Like I don't know, man. Like, and then Jamal Murray, who's slowly come back into form, who's looking better and better as the games go on. They're gonna get Michael Porter Jr. back in the lineup. I will say KCP has been such an underrated addition for that team on both ends of the floor. Aaron Gordon is having as good of a year he's had in such a long time, like you just mentioned, Chin. Like he's averaging 17 points a game right now, but like also his impact on the defensive end. Like they're also deep. Like this is a team that like very well could be in the Western Conference Finals competing for a championship this year. And a lot of that does hinge on Jamal Murray's health because without Jamal Murray, this team won't get very far.
And
But
missed the back
like
shots.
and miss the back shots. But you know what I mean? Like I really like what I'm seeing, and like as they start to gel together, they're currently sitting number one in the Western Conference, right? And so I think let's say Jamal Murray gets back to some form of 100% by the end of the season into playoffs. Um, MPJ is back. Nikola Jokic is playing just as well as he has. You know, obviously he's had some injury trouble this year, but you get him back full health. They go into the playoffs with a top 2-3 seed. Like You give him that man. You give that man the MVP, the MVP trophy, and I think it's kind of like balls deep from there. Like, I think the Nuggets are a real contender this year, as opposed to like the last couple of years where they've been like a top team, but without Jamal Murray, it's hard to put a stamp on where they are. But damn, I don't know, man. Like, the Nuggets are such a fun team to watch right now. Also, like
Sure.
dude, I don't know. There's so much that could be said, but for me, it's just like how amazing Nikola Jokic is. Like, people don't give him enough props just because he's not a guy who jumps out the gym.
Yeah, I will say, I thought I thought next year would be their year, but seeing how like it, I don't know if how the numbers compare, but I just think the offense just runs so much more smoother now that you have a secondary playmaker with Jamal Murray.
Mm-hmm.
The way that it's able to like you're kind of drifting away from that heliocentrism when it comes to the playmaking is just another thing that opens up a whole bunch more avenues, and like everybody wants to kind of like take the MVP trophy away because his numbers are dipping down. But and when you look at it again, like you just mentioned, they're top of the West right now. There's really no clear case to say Jokic isn't at least in consideration for his third. And again, I think a lot of it just hinges on of what Michael Porter Jr.'s situation is going to be. And even then, the team that they have right now without MPJ, I would definitely put them up against anybody else in the West for sure. Now,
Yep.
obviously, that might come down to the stretch where you wish you had a guy like MPJ, but when you have these guys, I think the Jokic's, the Giannis's, the KD's, the Lukas, these are the guys that, 5-on-1, I'll give him a few games kind of thing. So Jokic, I think he's only just entering his prime too. A couple years from now, whew, and he's only 0.8 assists from averaging a triple double. I think
Yeah.
a center averaging a triple double
That's
would
insane.
be like, I don't know if that'll ever happen again. But man,
Can you believe that he's third in assists? And the other the other four guys in the top five are Tyrese Halliburton, Trae Young, Luka
Wait,
Doncic, and
yeah.
Darius Garland.
All
what's
point
the
guards.
who's the closest center? I feel like it's got to be in like the 50s. Who would he even be?
Domantas Sabonis,
Oh,
who's actually
yeah.
having a really good year.
Yeah, Sabonis.
What,
But
five
Domantas is 12th,
oh shit!
right? And then
That's some
Draymond is
crazy
14th, but like that's some insane stuff, man. Like that's just insane stuff. Like Nikola Jokic is the third leading assists per game guy in the league in the monks of guards. Like that's insane, man. Like, dude, I don't
efficiency
know
is
how you
crazy
can't
too, bro.
Just give him the damn trophy.
He's shooting
man.
60% right now.
Yeah.
Dang.
Dude, and like his 3-point percentage is below average, but it's still not bad for basic people standards, like 33%, rounding it up. Like he's shooting 80% from the free throw line, 11 rebounds a game. Like he is one of the top. I think he might be leading the league in efficiency rating.
All right. I think we can have this as the last topic before we just quickly like give our Christmas Day like picks. But if Jokic wins his third, where would y'all say he ranks amongst centers?
Oh, centers. That's so tough. The center debate is
tough.
like so. That's like the longest list of all lists.
Yeah.
True. So obviously at
I
the
mean-
top you probably got like I don't even know who the top
Kareem.
would be, but yeah, Kareem,
Kareem, Wilt, Shaq,
Shaq,
Bill Russell,
Hakeem.
Keem.
Oh, ah,
That's
think-
5 already.
you got to bring Keem up a bit there too, for sure.
You got David Robinson. There's who else is a great center in this league?
Cat thinks he's the greatest big man shooter.
Yeah, he's on the conversation. You know what? Jokic might be in the top 5.
He would. I think he would crack top 5.
I think he would have to crack top 5. 3 MVPs, the numbers
would
he's
too.
averaged. Like,
I
the
think-
numbers he's averaged.
I think when you consider the whole of offense, fuck it, I'll say he might be the best to ever do it. When you think about, you know, the fact that all these guys were dominant when it came to scoring the ball, but I don't think there's never been a center that's been this high caliber of a scorer, as well as being one of the top playmakers in the league.
That's
And
what I'm saying.
when you look at like the offensive like capabilities of Jokic, yeah, I think that he'd definitely be top 5. And then, you know, chips are kind of bullshit in some ways, I think, but if he wins this would be like the cherry on top, I think. And he's just about entering his prime.
I mean, like, if you look at the top 10, I mean, there's like Bill Walton. Oh, Patrick Ewing is definitely in there. Moses Malone. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, how do you not have Jokic in the conversation? Like, if you look at the top 10 bigs, like, that are ranked, like, on average consensus spots, like, a lot of these top centers never averaged over 5 assists. Like, the closest guy, I think, was Kareem, who had 4.4 assists.
Man, you know what?
Like-
I don't think there's any way to like solidly track this stat, but can you imagine how crazy Jokic is? Like, if they counted the assist, because you know how they do it on 2K where it like the totals the points with your assist kind of thing. If they
Yeah.
did that, Jokic would be he'd be like Wilt level numbers, I think.
Yeah,
That would be
points
insane.
accounted for, 100%. I don't know, man. He's in the conversation, dude. Like, Jokic is just so damn good, and we've never seen a player like him ever in this league. There's a reason why he's won the last 2 MVPs.
No doubt. But all right. We have come to the conclusion of the Blacktop podcast. We appreciate y'all kicking with us. Before we head off, though, let's just do some quick picks for who we think is going to win on Christmas. You know, first game, 9 a.m. in the Garden, Sixers Knicks. Who y'all taking?
Sixers.
Taking the Knicks.
Yeah, I think the Knicks are kind of humming right now, man.
Some
Good-
dogs.
But Joel could have one of those like legendary Christmas games. So
I'm
we'll
hoping he
see.
does.
But I would take the Knicks. Yeah. Lakers, Mavs. Come on.
Mavs.
It's not even a conversation.
Yeah.
Bucks, Celtics. This is definitely the best game that's going to happen on Christmas. No doubt about it. And that's because the Milwaukee Bucks are going to win.
I don't know.
Okay, wait. I just want to hear what you two think first. Like, Chen, you obviously picked the Celtics, right?
Well, yeah, of course. I just think, I don't know, Jason Tatum comes to play on Christmas,
Jason Tatum doesn't show up in big moments.
bro. That's
Jason
just the
Tatum
He
doesn't
doesn't
come
Jason
show up.
Tatum didn't win the
He does
NBA.
on Christmas Day. He does on
Yeah.
Christmas Day.
We all remember that shot over Giannis. That was that a Christmas Day? It was, right?
They still lost that
I
game.
think so.
No, like the one where he like hit the 3 to win the game. Wasn't that?
No,
a
that was
Christmas-
opening night a couple
Oh, that was
years
opening
ago. Yeah.
That's a big night too. It's gonna happen again. It's gonna happen again.
I've got the Celtics.
You got the Celtics? 2-on-1. Whatever it may
I got the
be.
Celtics.
I'm used to rolling with the underdogs, baby. Man, Grizzlies Warriors. Fuck it, man.
Grizzlies.
Jordan
I'll take the
Poole
Warriors.
Christmas Day game, man. Jordan Poole gonna have the pool party gonna be in full effect.
He's gonna have 40, but the
But
Grizzlies
they're gonna
win
lose by 30.
40.
The last game, Suns and Nuggets. I mean,
This one might actually be fun. If Devin Booker's healthy to play, this one might be a fun one.
I think he's sitting tonight, so that I would hope that he's like well rested and ready to go for Sunday. But
I'm taking the Nuggets.
we're all
though.
taking the Nuggets, right?
Yeah, I think we're all
Come
taking
on
the
now.
Nuggets, yeah.
This is a
We just talked all that. We just
this is
talked
an
all that.
anti-Suns podcast. The Suns, poverty. Devin Booker, ass. Mikal Bridges, ass. DeAndre Ayton, ass. Chris Paul, ass. Jay Crowder, that motherfucker don't even play. Cam Johnson, I hope
He's okay.
he's alright. He gets a
I got
little
respect
pass.
for it.
Cameron Payne.
Ass. Think about it. Like the one
Magic
moment
Hogan.
that people might be able to recall from this entire season is just some defensive play from Josh Okogie. Granted, that was a solid defensive play, but you know, are we really counting highlights against the Rockets?
Ass. Whole team ass.
Monty Williams, I fuck with
Ass.
Monty. Nah, Monty
No,
was a
that's
pass.
good. Yeah, Monty's solid.
Monty's solid. But man, if there's a team, has there been? Can you guys think of a team that had this quick of a peak and this quick of a decline?
The Lakers.
The Orlando Magic.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They went to the finals, and then after that, they blew everything up. That was crazy, man. How do you trade Dwight Howard a year later after making the finals?
That team was nice. Hedo Turkoglu.
They couldn't pay everyone though, and they had
True.
problems with Stan Van Gundy and Dwight Howard.
True. But regardless,
Like 2009, and then boom,
Oh,
they lost.
this has been another episode of the Blacktop Podcast. We appreciate y'all taking your time with us, whether you're in the
Yes.
stream or you're watching and listening now. We appreciate you. We hope you have happy holidays and all that. Boys, y'all got anything to end off with?
Yes.
Mm.
That's what
Anything,
kids
Jim?
gonna be eating. No, just kidding. Actually,
With that, stay safe, stay blessed.
Yeah,
We'll see
I was
y'all
just drinking a
soon.
smoothie.